Hello, and welcome to A Perspective on Crime, a podcast that explores contemporary research in criminology. Since as long as I can remember, The Archers has been part of my life. As a kid, either in the kitchen or in the car, the soundtrack was the Radio 4 soap opera. It feels almost sacrilege to call it a soap opera, but that's what it is, regardless of the fact that a great many of its millions of listeners wouldn't want to be associated with such a tawdry form of art. Created as the everyday story of country folk, there's one aspect of the lives of its characters that's anything but everyday. It's the level of crime in and around the village of Ambridge. Even in the 40 or so years I've been listening, I could name at least 6 significant characters that spent time in prison. Out of an estimated 400 residents, that's a level of incarceration more associated with South Central LA than South Portchester. That's before we get to the witness intimidation, armed robbery, and great unsolved mystery of who stole the bunting from the village green. The Archers is a drama though, and for many of us, the rural idyll of the English countryside is better characterised by peaceful villages, rolling green fields, and a strong sense of community. It's seen as a place of safety and simplicity, far removed from the crime and chaos of the big city. But what's it like to grow up there if you find yourself on the wrong side of the law? This episode, we're exploring that very question by diving into a fascinating new piece of research that's titled Rurality in Crime, a qualitative study exploring young people's experiences in a region in England. The paper is by lead author Sarah Lavinia Joseph and her colleagues and was recently published in the Journal of Youth Justice. The research is important because, frankly, much of what we think we know about youth crime from the studies is set in big cities. The unique experiences of young people in the countryside are often overlooked, leaving a major gap in our understanding. This paper helps to fill that gap, offering a powerful look into the complex and often contradictory world of rural life for a specific group of young people. At its heart, this is a qualitative study. This means that instead of crunching big numbers, the researchers wanted to understand the world from the participants' own point of view. They conducted in-depth interviews with 10 young people aged between 13 and 17. All of them completed community sentences with the youth justice system in rural parts of England that the researchers call Fordshire to protect their anonymity. It's a small-scale study, but what it lacks in numbers it makes up for in depth, giving us a rare glimpse into these young people's worlds. What emerges from these conversations is a powerful central theme, which the authors call the duality of rurality. It's a simple but profound idea. For these young people, living in the countryside was a double-edged sword. Their experience was defined by contradiction, a constant push and pull between opposite forces. The study highlights 2 major dualities that shaped their lives and, in some cases, their offending. The first, sanctuary versus isolation. It's a classic one. The countryside is a place of peace versus a place of profound boredom and isolation. On the one hand, some of the young people really did see their rural home as a place of sanctuary and respite. They valued the quiet and the connection to nature. As 16-year-old George put it, what he liked about Fordshire was that it's really peaceful, he said. It's really quiet. For those who had moved from more urban areas, the countryside could feel like a real, genuine fresh start, a chance to escape a more troubled past. 13-year-old Ruby, who had moved to the area, said, "You get to stay out of trouble here. You don't have to fight to be in a gang." But that peace came at a cost. The other side of the coin was a deep sense of isolation and restriction. The practical challenges are huge. Poor public transport, for example, was a consistent frustration that limited their independence and their future. 13-year-old Tim summed it up bluntly. None of them buses go anywhere you want. This wasn't just an inconvenience, it had a real-world impact, restricting their access to education and, crucially, to job opportunities. And this isolation led directly to another major problem: boredom. With a severe lack of leisure opportunities, there was often simply nothing to do. Researchers found that this boredom could be a direct trigger for offending. 16-year-old Jack's words on this were powerful. He said that since the youth club closed down, there was a rise in the crime rate. We just started taking drugs, drinking alcohol, because there was nothing better for us to do. That's the direct causal link, right there. From policy, the cutting of funds, to offending behaviour. For these young people, the very tranquillity of the countryside could curdle into a boredom that pushed them towards risk and crime. The other duality was the under-the-radar versus the hyper-visible. This is where the story gets more complicated. At the exact same time the young people could use the landscape to hide, they felt completely exposed in their own communities. First, the physical landscape of the countryside, with its vast fields, woodlands and quiet back roads, could make it easier to commit certain types of crime without being seen. 16-year-old Tasha explained it this way. Rural areas are quite good for hiding things up, because there's loads of fields, and when people do something, they get into the fields and go into the woodland areas and just escape. This created a sense of freedom from surveillance, a space where they could get away from things. But, and this is a huge but, this was immediately contrasted with a feeling of being hyper-visible within the community itself. In small, close-knit towns, everyone knows everyone. And once you get a reputation, it's incredibly difficult to shift. Part of this is simple demographics. With fewer young people around, they naturally stand out more. The young people described a powerful sense of stigma, of being consistently watched and judged by suspicious adults. Jack, the same young man who talked about the youth clubs closed, described the experience of just going to the shops. It's a bit aggravating, because I'm trying to change, but people are still holding their name against me that I had 2 years ago. The feeling of being scrutinised is being unable to escape your past. It must make it much harder for young people to move on and build a different future. So we have a paradox. The countryside is both a sanctuary and a trap. To understand how a single place can be both of these things at once, we need to zoom out and look at the invisible systems shaping these young people's lives. This is where researchers do something clever. They don't just present these powerful stories. They give us a tool to understand the hidden forces that connect them. The tool elevates the research from a collection of experiences to true analysis. They use the political ecological framework, but don't let the name intimidate you. In simple terms, it's a way of seeing a young person's life as being shaped by a series of nested layers of influence. A bit like a set of Russian dolls. These layers range from the most immediate personal world right up to the level of government policy and societal beliefs. We'll quickly walk through a few of these layers using the stories we've already heard. Closest, there's the microsystem. This is the innermost doll. It's the person's immediate relationships, their family, their close friends, the people they see every day. Then there's the mesosystem. This is the next layer out, representing the places where they interact, like their school or their home. Then there's the exosystem. This layer includes the wider community structures that affects them, even if they aren't directly involved. The lack of a reliable bus service is a perfect example. Remember 13-year-old Tim who said that none of them go where they want? That's his exosystem in action. A decision about a bus route, made in an office he'll never see, directly limits his freedoms and his future. And then there's the macro system. This is the bigger, outermost doll. It represents the big picture beliefs and values of society. And the macro system is that feeling of being watched that Jack describes in the shop. It's the unspoken community belief, the macro system, that young people are in trouble and it makes it impossible for him to escape his past. This framework is so powerful because it shows that young person's behaviour isn't just about individual choices. It's deeply connected to their entire environment, from the bus timetable and the location of the youth clubs to the unspoken attitudes of the neighbours. So, what does all this mean for the people working on the ground to support these young people? A key takeaway from the research is that youth justice practitioners need to look beyond the individual and consider the very real structural challenges that young people face in rural areas. It's not enough to focus on behaviour without also looking at the context. Interestingly, the young people in the study had very positive things to say about their interactions with the youth justice system, or the YJS. They appreciated the support, guidance and opportunities they were given. For some, the YJS worker was a trusted adult that they could talk to outside of the family. For 13-year-old Laura said about her worker, "I get on with my mum and my dad, but then there's one time where I need someone to talk to who's not my mum or my dad." The YJS also provided valuable new experiences. Jack, for instance, spoke positively about a group trip to Mount Snowdon in Wales. He said it helped him understand that, quote, doing stuff in a group, you just don't have to do the crime. It's like you keep yourself occupied. Now, this is more than just a fun trip. The paper links this to an important concept called bridging social capital. This is where people from different backgrounds get connected through networks of solidarity. By organising that trip, the YJS wasn't just providing an activity, it was actively building the social capital that was otherwise missed in these isolated rural environments. Based on these findings, the paper points towards some clear solutions. The most powerful one is the need to create sanctioned, positive spaces for young people to gather. Jack's memory of the old youth club is incredibly poignant. He recalled it as a place where everyone would come together and there wouldn't be any fights. It was a safe, neutral ground that simply didn't exist anymore. The paper argues that investing in community infrastructure, things like youth clubs and better public transport, isn't just a social good, it's a practical form of crime prevention. By tackling the boredom and isolation at its root, you can change the environment that allows offending to take hold. This all points to the need for a more holistic, community-focused approach to youth justice in rural settings. So, what's the core message to take away from all this? I think it's the classic image of the rural adult, which, for many young people, is a myth. Their lives are far more complex, defined by that powerful duality of sanctuary and isolation, of freedom and scrutiny. And here's a final thought. To genuinely help young people move away from crime, we must move beyond focusing on their choices and start restructuring systems that limit those choices in the first place. To providing appropriate transport, to rebuilding the youth club that once gave them a sense of a place to belong. The correlations and connections between youth offending in rural communities and those in the cities don't really seem so different after all. All of this was took from a paper called Rurality and Crime, a qualitative study exploring young people's experiences in a region in England, by Sarah Lavinia Joseph and her colleagues, published in the Journal of Youth Justice. For anyone interested in reading the work for themselves, which of course I'd encourage, we'll include a direct link to the research in the show notes. Until next time, goodbye.